Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Looks like we're going to have a sunny day today, and possibly it's going to get a bit warmer over the weekend. This time of year, even on a sunny day, we only just about get up to 20 degrees C outside. Yeah. Now inside that can be dramatically different because the sun comes through the glass. So I could get up to sort of 26, 27 today, but you know, it's a wait and see, and if it does, this time of year, that temperature's appreciated. Firstly, I get a major difference between daytime and nighttime. That's good. Constant temperatures are not good for orchids. That difference between nighttime and daytime temperatures is quite important. And quite honestly, as long as it doesn't get too cold with that nighttime temperature for the type of orchids you've got, the bigger the difference, the better. It does them the world of good. But this video is basically a definitive video because I keep getting questions and they come in dribs and drabs, and the information I pass on goes out in dribs and drabs. So this is a definitive video on everything to do with my orchids, on the watering front, the feeding front, how I work, all that sort of stuff. Then any questions I get, I can just throw up the link to this video because it doesn't change that much. I do minor changes now and again, and due to those minor changes, they can be incorporated into this one. Okay, so first of all, Vandaceous type orchids, which includes my actual Vandas. They live up there. That's the brightest light I can get there for the longest period. So they live up there and they're doing fine. Okay, that one up there didn't bloom this year, but they're doing okay. That's my brightest light place. It's up near the roof, which means it gets the best warmth as well. Hot air rises, all that sort of stuff. Although with my circulating fans, it gets stirred up and probably isn't that much different between the roof and the floor. But, you know, there are days when the fans don't come on this time of year. So anyway, Vandaceous orchids, that includes my Brachystylus giganteas. It includes my Bangkok Sunset. Yeah, so that's my little set. There's my little seedling things. There's this thing, which is borderline getting thrown out. It really is. I mean, it looks like it's growing a kiki. I don't want a kiki. I want roots. And it's still produced none. The nubbins are still there. The plant hasn't hydrated. And there's no new leaves. So I don't think you're long for this world, mate. There's a point at which I get fed up and I look at the worth of the individual plant. And although that has lovely blooms on it, it's not that special for me in amongst my other Vandas, you know, so it may not be long for this world. Anyway, those type of orchids get dunked in the bucket. Now, I've just refreshed that water. That is pure RO water. So for the first time in a while, they will get the equivalent of a flush. But when you've got bare-rooted plants, what are you really flushing? You know, you may get off a little bit of residual feed that dried out on the surface of the roots before it was absorbed, but it won't be much. Yeah, so a flush for those bare-rooted plants is less essential, but if you're feeding high levels, you will get some residue on the roots. That's where you get the burning. So that's the thing you take care of. So every time I change that water, yeah, they get a flush, because it's the only opportunity they're going to get. I'm going to add some feed for tomorrow or the next day. Right, frequency on those. In the summer, every day. And apart from the initial flush that I've just said, there will be feed in that water at a relatively high level for me. Vandas can drink and feed a fair bit in the growing season. Yeah, so that would get my standard feed. I only use one fertiliser basically. I've got one additive which I use occasionally. I'll go into that. So basically they will get fed at a TDS level of somewhere around 300, 350. Now you can go higher than that for Vandas if you choose to do so and they're actively growing, but I feed every time I water, except for this once when the water's fresh. Changing the water. Ideally, I reuse water. That is highly not recommended. I can't overstate that enough. If you can find ways of looking after your orchids where you never share water, then stick to it. It's good stuff. I can't do it. Many reasons I can't do it. Yeah, so it doesn't get done. I share water. I always have. Is everything dying? Is everything going down with viruses? Is everything keeling over with fusarium? No. So I am happy with how I work, but I don't recommend it. Don't go running away saying, oh, my plant's got a virus because Roger said I should share my water, because I didn't. I said don't share it. If you possibly can avoid sharing water, then please do so. Anyway, so that's the Vandaceous ones. They get dunked in there and they get left to soak. There is no predetermined time, but it's usually at least 15 minutes. Sometimes it's 3 or 4 hours because I go away and do something and forget that I've left a Vanda in there. Doesn't hurt them. Yeah, it's okay. Time of day. In the summertime with the long day lengths, the time of day that I do that makes no difference. They're going to be dry by the time it gets to the evening and gets dark again. In the winter time with the short days, it would need to be done as early in the day as I can get round to it to give them chance to dry off before those temperatures drop down. So that's time of day. Summertime, every day, unless I'm just out all day and can't do it. They'll miss a day. They won't all die. They haven't all died. So, that's okay. In the winter, when the day lengths are really short and I don't get the daytime temperatures, I'll probably move that to probably every 3rd day. But they will still get soaked. I don't believe you can hydrate Vandas sufficiently with a spray unless you really can, like use a hose or something and stand there, and you've got to wait till those roots go that deep green colour, because at that point they've taken on board as much as they can. And how long you soak them after that makes no flipping difference really, because they're not going to take much more in. The progress of nutrients and hydration in through the roots up through the plant is not fast. It's a slow, methodical progress with the liquid actually moving from cell to cell. It's not a rapid progress. Yeah. So once they're wet and they've soaked in all they can, it doesn't matter how much longer they stay in there. It's not going to do too much. The idea is to get them out, let them drip, yeah, and then hang them back up, and they will carry on taking on board all that stuff that's in that velamen throughout the day, and hopefully get back to an external dry state by the time the temperature drops at night. So that's that lot done. Yeah. Right, over here is the rest of the orchids. That will include my mounted orchids and my potted orchids. Yeah, so there's only 2 types. They're either mounted or they're potted. Various different medias, various amounts of moss on the mounts. Some next to none, some quite a bit. It varies, but they all get treated the same. Okay, my mounted orchids. This is stuff like this. Yeah. So I say, this one's got next to no media. This one's got quite a lot. It was a new plant. I didn't know how fast it was going to grow. So it varies. And you get things like this little one over here. Yeah. Okay, it's happy on its mount. It's pushing up 2 spikes. It's got next to no moss and not a large root system. That dries in a couple of hours. Yeah, if that went 3 days without water, I'd be pushing my luck, especially with developing spikes. So the timing is important. Again, with my mounted orchids, with the long days and the temperatures, every day. Very rarely do I miss a day. It's every day. We're now into the autumn. Day lengths down below 11 hours. They're getting shorter all the time. I haven't got such high daytime temperatures. Sometimes I only get up to about 20 and that's it for the day. Yeah? Night times are getting cooler. They're not going to be growing as fast. They don't need as much water and food. That's just logic. There's nothing scientific about that. That's just plants, whether it's orchids or not, So already this time of year, the mounts are now getting watered every other day. And as the day lengths get shorter and shorter and we head into winter, it'll go to every third day. Yeah? But it's weather dependent and temperature dependent. It's not ticking a box on a calendar. It's not, I must do this today because it says on the calendar. It's, I must do this today because it needs doing. Yeah? I don't drive anything in here by the calendar apart from the seasons, which I have to accommodate. Okay, my potted orchids, it depends on the type. Ones that need to stay moist, that's bulbophyllums, Miltoniopsis, Masdevallias, not that I've got many, Restrepias, what else? Paphiopedilums, need to stay moist, they don't like to dry out, yeah? So in the summertime, depending on how much moss is in with the bark, depending on how fast they're growing, but it averages watering about every 4th or 5th day, depending on how much sun we've had and how warm it's got. Spring and autumn, that moves to every 5th or 6th day, like now. Yeah. Winter time, that could go up to once a fortnight. If they're not using the water up and they're still wet in the winter, I'm not going to water them. They'll just get missed off a run. So although I will go to like a weekly based thing, not an exact science, but around every week I will look at all my pots. In the depths of winter, they will get missed if they're still wet. So they'll go another week before they get any. Yeah? But it's variable depending on how well something's growing, whether it's still growing well. Some plants don't care about seasons, they grow all through the year. So that's sort of frequencies adjusted by the seasons, number one, and secondly, by daytime temperatures. Yeah, like now, this time of year, if I get a sunny day today, I'll get heat in here. Things will use water more than they would do if I didn't. It's just plants, you know, I know it's orchids, but it's still just plants. And the most important thing really is to identify which plants are always growing at some rate and which plants really stop in the winter time. Their natural genetic makeup says that in their natural environment, more so species than hybrids, they don't grow much in the winter. The temperatures drop down, yeah, and it's cooler. They don't get the rains that they got through the growing season, so they go almost dormant. I won't say totally dormant. And don't forget, I haven't got any of those types, your catasetums, I haven't got any. So I haven't got to worry about a true dormant orchid because I haven't got any. I've got those that virtually stop growing, but don't totally stop. So they don't totally stay dry. So that's a go about frequencies and stuff. Right, tools of the trade next. RO water in both cases. That's clean, that's clean. Yeah, the Vanders will get done in a minute as I go along, and it's pot watering day today. Yeah, so what I do, because I share water, is I will start off with a very low feed level in there. Last time the pots were watered, they all got flushed. Yeah, so they didn't get fed at all, they just got water. Now some of those pots have still got feed probably, because they didn't dry out and they were fed the time before, and if they haven't used it all, it's still in there. And even though I flushed them, there could still be a little bit of feed left lying around that didn't get washed through. So they may have been not totally devoid of nutrients. Plus, there's bark and moss in a lot of the pots. That has a breaking down mechanism that constantly goes on. Hopefully as slow as possible, otherwise you've got loads of repotting to do. But nonetheless, the mechanism for things breaking down is decay. And decay is what in nature produces nutrients. You know, there isn't much in rainwater, not when it comes down out of the sky. It's pretty clean, not much in it. So the nutrients come from decaying things, leaves trapped in forks in branches, whatever, stuff that grows in the ground, leaf litter, stuff. Yeah, so Today I'm starting with clean water. So I will put a low level feed in here initially. That way I can do my Miltoniopsis. My Paphiopedilums don't need doing, they were only done a few days ago. I can get my Masdevallias and my Restrepias done. And then when they're done, I'll top the water up. If there's hardly any left, I'll change it. I'll waste some, but it won't be much. Yeah? So I'll then start again, and I'll increase my feed level for the rest of the pots. So there's only two types of feed for my potted orchids. There's the low level feed for those that really don't like excess feed near their roots. They will just keel over. So those plants will only ever get the low level feed. The others might get a low level feed sometimes. They might get a higher level feed sometimes. But whatever I mix up, the lot get it. I don't go round doing lots of different things for lots of different plants. I haven't got time, and quite honestly, to be blatantly honest, I can't be flipping bothered, because it don't make much difference. You know, deciding that this Cattleya needs a higher level feed than the one next to it, can't be bothered. So that's the methodology. Now the tools of the trade. I have some, this is it, this is all I've actually got, and some of this either never gets used or hardly ever. That's my current fungus spray. So that gets used, I won't say methodically, on an incredibly regular basis, and unfortunately this time of year it's not going to get used much at all, because when I use it, the same when I use the bug spray, I absolutely soak the plants. Well, I can only do that if I can guarantee they can dry that day and not go into the lower nighttime temperatures, you know, as it's getting colder at night, still wet, you know, with water in crowns and leaf joints and stuff. I can't allow that to happen. That's just a recipe for danger. So the usage of these will go down now, and the chances are the bug killer will become a spot treatment. So if I see there's a little outbreak on a particular plant, then I'll treat that plant. That way, at worst, only one plant goes into the nighttime temperatures wet. That's a damage limitation. But I haven't got many bugs around at the moment. I'm still finding the odd mealybug here and there. And most of the time, if I see a mealybug, then a mealybug gets squashed. No sprays, no chemicals. But, you know, I needed this to deal with the Fusarium infected plants, and I had another one on the go as well. They've all been treated, and those that were too far gone have been thrown out, so they're no longer a problem. Those that have taken the treatment and that are growing well and producing good roots and active new growths and look like a normal plant, they've come out of the treatment regime. They're no longer separated. So it's quite easy going in here. So that's my two chemicals, and their usage is going right downhill. Right, my fertiliser is the MSU formula. Little spoon. I'm not opening this, you're not going to get to see it. This stuff takes in moisture straight out of the air. Fast. If that lid stayed off in here, which, what are we at, 80% humidity at the moment, if I left that lid off for more than 30 seconds in here, this stuff would start to soak in the moisture, then it would go clumpy. So it only ever gets used in a dry atmosphere. The lid comes off, I take a couple of spoonfuls out and the lid goes straight back on tight. That's it. It's the only time the lid ever comes off. My methodology is that I... Ooh, down on one knee for you lot again. What I do with this stuff is I mix up a stock solution, which I keep cool and dark, as recommended by the man. Yeah? I had a chat, well, email chat, you know what I mean, about how to use this stuff and can I actually mix up a stock solution and will it go off? And basically he said, providing you give it a hell of a good shake before you use it and you keep it cool and dark, it'll last quite a long time in a mixed up form. Well, that information came from the main man. Think about the logic. Yeah, if I had to mix this up fresh each time, I'd have probably finished that tub by now, and I'd have to buy some more. So to give me that information is good, because most of the fertilisers you come across, if you ask somebody, they say, oh no, you must mix it up fresh every time. Well, of course you must, because that means you're going to want to buy some more much sooner. It's business. Whereas this guy was quite happy for me to use this at an incredibly slow rate. So I mix up a stock solution. I don't care what strength it is, it's irrelevant, because the TDS reading is not going to come into action until I mix it with my RO water, ready for the plants. You see what I'm getting at? So the strength of this is irrelevant. It's not going to get tested until it goes in the RO water for the plants, at which time, you know, I judge it. So that's my fertiliser, and I think I need some more. This tub's done me down to about there this year. That's the growing season. How long is that tub going to last? Quite a long time. I do need, by the time I've actually mixed up the feed in the Vander bucket, that will be gone, so I'll have to mix up some more. And that's just literally RO water, 4 or 5 of these in there, give it a good shake, leave it a while, give it another good shake, and then before I use it, give it another good shake. That was the instructions I got. And the strength, irrelevant. Right, if I'm using a low level feed, yeah, I'll use my TDS meter to get my reading. By low level feed, I mean somewhere around 80, 100 parts per million of this. Yeah, that's not going to reduce my pH much at all. That will probably bring it down to about 6.8, 6.9. Too high, outside of the recommended range. I know there's some sort of orchids don't mind it, but I have to generalise. So there are times when I need to lower the pH. I use that. Citric acid. Boy, is that stuff strong. This is evil. You don't want to get that on your skin, you know. Strong stuff. It's all in the name, you know. It's got acid in the name. Take care, yeah? And what I do with that is mix up a solution. It's stable. I'm reliably told this is stable. So having mixed it up, again, I mix it with RO water. The tiniest amount of that in that, I know it says hydrogen peroxide, that's just because I'm reusing it. It's got citric acid written on it, so I don't forget. So a very, very small amount of that means that if I need to drop my pH, I can use like a quarter of a capful. I haven't got to get a pipette out and use like half a drip or something silly, because the smaller amounts you try and use, the less accurate you will be. That's the reason why I do a stock solution of this. This fertiliser has many different size, shaped and coloured granules in it, including powder. If I used a quarter of one of them, would I get a balanced feed? No. If I use 5 or 6 of those, far more likely to get a balanced feed. That's why I use a stock solution. So anyway, these are crystals, in fact, like a crystal powder type thing. Very, very small amount in there, and it allows me to drop my pH in a controlled manner with something that won't hurt the plants when I need to do it. If I'm feeding the plants at their highest level feed, this stuff will take the pH down to 6.5 on its own without anything added. Yeah? So that's those two. Should I ever require to raise the pH? Why would I want to do that? Should I ever want to raise it? The tiniest amount of that, literally like a quarter of a pinch, an imperial pinch, don't forget, not an, you know, not a metric pinch, an imperial pinch. Yes, I am mucking about. The tiniest amount of that will change your pH 2 or 3 points. Quite dramatic, that stuff, and so far I've used it once. Never had to use it. I've got some of this, and I have decided to incorporate it into my feeding program. That's my only supplement. Now it's CalMag, but it's actually got some nitrogen in it, and it's got added iron as well. So it's not just calcium and magnesium, it has got 2 other elements in there as well. Don't know whether you can read that if you're that fussed. You might have to pause. But basically I use that occasionally, and it's not really on a regular basis. I mean, this is a perfectly balanced fertiliser I'm using. It's got calcium and magnesium in it. It's got iron in it. Obviously, it's got nitrogen in it. It's a fertiliser. So that gets used occasionally. And if I use it on its own. I don't mix it with anything else. It's just, for this particular watering, that's what they're going to get. And quite honestly, they only ever get that if they were flushed the time before, so that's what they get. You know, there shouldn't be anything left lying around in the pot to mix with. Yeah, so it goes in on its own, and that's planned. If I use that, I make sure I flushed previously. And I use that mixed up, you know, and tested with the TDS meter at around 130 to 150. So it's quite a low level. I'm not stonking that stuff up because I'm not absolutely certain I even know what I'm doing with it. But I'm quite happy to use it at a low level and boost those elements now and again. Probably every 3 weeks, something like that. Going into the winter, I doubt if there's any need, quite honestly. You know, the rate of growth slows down. They're not going to gobble up the elements of the standard fertiliser at a rate that leaves a deficiency in the winter. That'll come into its own in the spring with all that lovely new active growth. That'll be used a little more often, perhaps. So that's it. That's what I've got. The next thing I'm going to do, people ask, how do you water your orchids? As well as what with. So that's going to need the tripod, so that'll be the next thing I do, as I'm just about to start watering anyway. But there is an essential ingredient. Having got my RO unit going, done the Vander bucket, sorted out some RO water in here, there's something that's absolutely essential now before I carry on and set the tripod up. It's called coffee. I'll be back. Whoops. Whenever I talk about feed, I forget to state the levels at which I use. Now, I've done the Vander bucket, and strength of my fertiliser I use in there as a standard feed every single time except for the flush. Now, with the pots, I consider a low level feed, for those that just don't like any form of strong feed, around a TDS reading of 80, 100, maybe 110, but that's it. They never get anything any stronger than that. Yeah. However, when things are growing well and I want to give what I consider a high level feed, I'll head up towards the 300 mark. Very rarely do I go higher than that. Every now and again, normally because I've oversplooped the fertiliser in the RO water and I can't be bothered to change it, I might go up as high as a TDS reading of 350. But for the normal pots and the mounts, that would be unusual because I do feed frequently. So they're not getting 3 or 4 flushes followed by one feed. They're getting one flush followed by 3 or 4 feeds. Well, in the winter, maybe one, alternating because they're not using it. But, you know, it has to vary. But, so a high level feed for me, general purpose, is around a TDS reading of between 250 and 300. Occasionally I'll go a bit higher. Low level feed down near the 100 mark. And don't forget, a TDS reading is an average reading. It's not really telling you the content of your feed and the different levels of, you know, the elements within it. You get that off the packet, quite honestly. It's not rocket science. It tells you what percentages of what are in the flipping stuff on the box or on the packet or on the tub. You know, so out of a given amount of this, providing it's balanced and there's enough of it used to get that balance. I know that, you know, if my TDS reading is 300, those are the percentages of the elements, roughly. And that's all I need to know, roughly. I'm not a scientist, I'm not mixing it all up individually, and there's no way I would ever go down to trying to deal with those individual fertiliser elements as standalone elements. I don't know anywhere near enough about that sort of thing to even think about it, let alone attempt it. That's why I used a balanced feed recommended for orchids. It's not recommended for certain times of years, it's just recommended for orchids. It just sort of generally averages out and works. And that's all I need. Right, what else do I need? Coffee, that was it. I'll be back.